What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down a wide receiver football IQ quiz to test your knowledge of the position. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it can teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you would like a daily training schedule to follow with the exact gym exercises and on-field drills you should be doing as a wide receiver, check out that very first link in the description below for our ultimate 8-week wide receiver workout plan. We break down every single exercise and drill with the exact sets and reps and an example of each one to show you guys how to do it correctly. So if you want some more information on that, an exact schedule to follow, check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started with this video. So now, if you're not familiar with our quiz style videos, how it's going to work is I'm going to show like a pre-snap look, or I'm going to play a clip full speed. I'm going to ask you a series of questions about the clip, the pre-snap look, whatever it might be, give you a chance to answer, pause the video, and then we're going to break things down to see if you were right or wrong. Okay, so now this first example, I'm going to play, or we're going to talk about a scenario. So it's going to be a pre-snap look, but it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to give you a chance to answer. So if you were to run, like let's say you were running a 10 to 12 yard dig versus this inside leverage coverage. So obviously when this DB's lined up inside shade and you have to run a dig, how do you think you would want to run the route? That's not going to be the question. I think this is a given for everybody who's familiar with the page. You would want to attack him inside, get him to keep his leverage, and take the outside release. Now, my question is, it's kind of a two-part question. Number one, what should be the goal with your outside release when you're taking an outside release on a dig? And then number two, when you get to your goal, what should you do at the break point? What type of cut should you make at the break? Okay, so what should your goal be after you attack his leverage? And then what type of cut should you make when you get to that goal? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. Go ahead and pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So the goal would be every single time that we're faced with man coverage, the goal would be to stack. Now, if we are running a dig route is one of those routes where there's many different ways to cut at the top of the break. You could snap down, you could do a rocker step, you could do a single cut, but my goal would be to stack this DB. I want to attack him to the inside, close the space, take the outside release, and get him to this point. Stacking a DB is when that DB is trailing my back hip. Now, that's the goal. That's the first part of the question. So if you guys said that would be correct. If the DB plays it correctly, or plays it well, I should say, and let's say he's over the top of me, maybe he's got some speed, that is when you could slip underneath him and throw by. My goal is not to throw him by. My goal is always to stack whenever it's man coverage. Now, when I get to that point, what type of break should you do at the top of the route? And I was looking for you guys to say anything that is not snapping down or dropping your hips. If you guys were thinking that, okay, on a dig route, I'm going to drop my hips at the break and then come out at a 90. The issue with that is that when you have this DB stacked and you drop your hips, what's he going to do? He's probably going to run into you, right? Like he's running full speed. He's playing a fade. We should be selling a fade, and you drop your hips and try to slow down. He's going to run right into you, and then the timing of the route is off, and then you might be able to get locked up. So if you guys said at the top of the break using something like a single cut or maybe a rocker step, that would be 100% correct. But the only time against man coverage where you would snap down on that dig is if we maybe completely work this guy. We got 5 yards of separation. Yeah, you probably could. Or he plays it well. He is right over the top of me and I drop my hips to slip underneath and run that dig. But if we got him stacked, we cannot snap down. He will just run into me. Okay, fellas? So I hope that makes sense. Let me play this again, full speed one more time. So great job by Adams attacking the leverage, taking the outside release, working to stack, but not snapping down so that DB does not run into him. Okay, so now, second example I want to talk about here is I'm going to play this route full speed, and we're going to talk about what the wide receiver did wrong, okay? So first snap or pre-snap look, we have outside leverage, press coverage, and this wide receiver is going to be running like a 10 to 15 yard out route. Okay, so as we all know, it's very similar to the dig, but just in the opposite respect of things. You'd want to attack his leverage outside, try to get him to hold his leverage, and take the inside release. And he does that. The receiver conceptually does the right thing, but the route doesn't work. And I want to ask you guys, I want to know what you think as to why it doesn't work. So let's play it full speed. So he comes off, takes the inside release here, but why do you think this route did not work and Gilmore was in such a great position to make a play? I'm going to play this thing one more time. Why do you guys think this route didn't work? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So first things first here. When this wide receiver is taking this inside release, number one goal, like we talked about, is what? You have to try to stack. Now, stacking is one thing, but also you have to do something called getting skinny off the line of scrimmage. So getting skinny is when you try to get as tight as you can to this DB on the stem portion of the route. So let's say your break is at 15, from 0 yards all the way to 15 yards. You were trying to get as close as you can to the DB or get hip to hip with him so we can restack. That's what they call getting skinny, right? So this wide receiver comes off the ball and he takes this inside release. He doesn't really attack this DB's leverage. So if you guys said that he didn't attack the DB's leverage off the line, so that allowed him to reroute him, that wouldn't be wrong, I would say. But I think the top of the break is where he kind of loses it, because you see how he just tries to run away from this defender. He gets hands and there's this big gap between the two of us. That does not allow us to stack. That does not allow us to throw by, because this DB has too much space to recover. If you guys on this stem try to break and slip under a DB with about a yard or two of space, all he's going to do is just open up his hips and be right there. But imagine if he would have put this brakes on and this DB was maybe a yard closer to him, and he could have used this inside or this outside hand to swat the DB's inside shoulder or hip and slip under him, use that throw by like we were talking about in the last example. That would have got him space. So I would say the whole reason this didn't work, I think it could have worked even with the release that he took. He just needs to be skinny. When you guys are running a route, you have to use your body to your advantage. Get into that DB's frame, get into his cushion. We want to be literally hip to hip with him so there's no space for him to recover. So I either stack or I could throw him by and create space. So if that's what you guys said, that would be correct, but definitely need to get skinny on this break. Anytime that we were in a situation where I could throw the DB by, maybe I take a release opposite of what the DB's leverage is, I always want to get skinny. Okay, so now this is going to be like a two-part question here. So I'm going to give you guys this pre-snap look. We're going to talk about a route that you're going to run off of this look. And then I'm going to talk about what you think the wide receiver did wrong on this specific rep. So pre-snap, first part of the question, how would you guys run a 10-yard out versus this specific coverage? So how would you guys run a 10-yard out versus this coverage? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So this DB pre-snap, every single time that you come up to the line, anytime you're trying to come up with a plan off the line, you have to have a pre-snap process. You have to be able to identify 3 specific things about a DB. Number 1 being his leverage. So is he outside leverage? Is he head up? Or is he inside leverage? This specific case, he's inside leverage. Number 2, how close or how far is he? He is 5 yards off, kind of playing this like catch technique look. Okay, inside shade, catch technique, 5 yards off. And then the last thing is determine if it's man or zone. Because in some cases, like in a real game scenario, a DB might be outside shade facing you like this, and that looks more like off man. But in some cases, he might be outside shade with his eyes looking to the inside, and that would be more like zone, right? So that's why. One-on-ones, it's easy to determine. So if you guys said you would attack him to the inside and close space, get him to widen, take the outside release, then break, that would be correct. If you guys were saying, oh, you want to run right at his outside shoulder and get his hips to flip, then break, that would be wrong, just because that's where the DB wants us to go. If we don't try to threaten him to the inside and we just take off and go run and he gets hands, that's going to make him squeeze me all the way to that sideline. So we want to attack leverage and take that outside release. Now, second part of this question, I'm going to play this full speed, and I want you guys to think about what this wide receiver could have done better on this route. So I'm going to play it full speed. So what do you think this wide receiver could have done better on the route? So I'm going to play it one more time, and then I'll give you guys a chance to pause the video and think about it. So what do you think this wide receiver could have done better on to get more separation at the break? So you guys go ahead and pause the video and think about your answer. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So if you guys said that he did not close enough space with the DB, that would be 100% correct. If you guys were talking about kind of the break point, maybe he pushed off a little bit, I could see that argument for sure. I think there was definitely a hold and a push off, so like I don't really think that's going to be called. I think both parts are at fault here. But not closing the space is what he could have done a little bit better on. And let's explain why. Because when we come off the ball, we obviously know we got to attack this DB's leverage to get him to hold the leverage. But there's about a 2-yard gap of space here that's an easy recovery for the DB. Because if you got to run a 10-yard route and you're coming off the ball right here at 0 yards on the route, you have to get up to 10. You have to stretch this route vertically. So if you attack this DB's leverage, you still have to get up vertical. And if there's a gap, he's got a better angle and he could just meet you right at the break point. So that's an easy recovery for him. And it really doesn't threaten the DB too much to the inside. You see how he just meets him at the break point. At the vertical stem, he just meets him there. And that's where all that you have to push off. You got to get real physical tackle at the break point, when honestly, we don't even need to. We could have gotten way more separation if he would have eaten up more cushion. So instead of making this break like at 2 yards, he should make this break at 4 yards. Let's actually step on his toes. Let's close the space. Anytime there's distance between me and the DB, I need to close the space so he doesn't have an easy recovery angle. Let's threaten him and let's get into his toes, okay? Now, second thing I want to talk about here is that when you guys come off the ball, don't be afraid of closing the space because this DB is going to get hands. I think that's where everybody's super hesitant on, is that they're like, oh, well, coach, well, if I close the space with this DB and I get up into him, he's just going to get hands and jam me. You have to understand about hand technique. It's way simpler than a lot of people lead on. You guys have probably all seen the old school YouTube videos of guys, receiver coaches working all the different hand swat, hand techniques, but they never talk about like when to actually use something like that. So think it's all based on knowing the situation, and that pre-snap process helps me with that. So pre-snap process, he's inside leverage. I got to take an outside release. I'm going to attack him. So which hand do you have to worry about the most? Which hand would prevent you from taking an outside release? His outside hand. The inside hand plays no factor. So if you guys close the space and you're worried about him getting hands on you, you just have to be thinking on the attack. I know I'm going to swat this hand. If I get his hands off, let's say he shoots this right hand at me, and I swat with my left hand and I rip underneath, and he recovers with his outside hand. So what if he recovers? I got off the jam. The whole purpose of a DB getting hands on us is to disrupt timing with the quarterback. That's what they're taught. But if I could just swat that initial hand, get up into my route, still keep timing, your separation comes at the top of the break, not off the line. So all you got to worry about is keeping timing. That is at the end of the day what we have to worry about. So fellas, just know that if you're a little hesitant, like I don't want to close space because I think this DB is going to get hands, do not worry about it. Just have a plan and know which hand to beat. I'm going to play this again full speed one more time. Great job by that wide receiver. Conceptually, just needs to clean up that release a little bit more. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you guys would like to get an 8-week wide receiver gym and field workout schedule, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. I'll see you guys next time.